Regret is one of the themes that really runs through this book. And it's interesting to me that you say the book is your mom's book rather than yours, because of course it is about her life much more than it is about yours. There's not a lot of the child Ruth in that book, but when the child Ruth does appear, or the adolescent Ruth, she's a child who isn't getting mothered very much. And you do these, what Ruth calls them the mim tales, the funny stories about her mom. But they're very ironic, and I'm wondering, as the child who didn't get mothered, if you could go back and do it over again, your relationship with her, what would you do differently?
Well, what I would do differently is I would have seen her. I would have tried to get to know her. I would have asked her questions. I would not have run away the way I did. There's no question, she was difficult, she was bipolar. But reading the notes and the diaries and the letters, what I discovered was behind all of that, she's being very protective of me. So I think she was being the best possible mother she could be. And she being a mother in the ordinary sense. She was strange, there's no question about it, and she was needy, but she was also protecting me and pushing me to not make the mistakes that she had made.
Hence the title of the book. She was protecting you from that.
Yes, I mean, she absolutely did not want me to be her.
Right, and she clearly did a great job.
And she did a really good job at that. And I never got to thank her.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what this book is.
It is, but she's not here to know it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. The shift in subject matter, I understand and hear you that you have talked about yourself, and I remember in your previous memoirs, but it was always embedded in something a little lighter feeling, and it always had food around it as garnish. And I'm wondering, given how different this book is, it's so psychological, if you're expecting a different audience, who's it for?
Well, I actually think that this book it's mostly for women, although certainly men have have had a really strong response to it. But I think that it's especially for women of my generation to try and see that generation, my mother's generation, they were pioneers. I mean, I don't think that they cut themselves any slack, and I think it's time for us to cut them some slack. And one of the amazing things for me in this book is that as I go around talking to people about it,
bless you,
I didn't intend this, but it turns out to also be for young women, because I've had so many young women come up to me and say, I am your mother. And I thought things had gotten much better, and it turns out that things are, for women today, life is difficult. I think that it's less difficult here in Canada than it is in the United States, and that you have better social policy for women. But
we do. For example, we have much longer maternity leave than you do.
Right, exactly. In the United States, you get 2 months,
right,
and then you're back at work.
What are we getting, 2 years now? I'm old, I'm past my breeding years. If we look out at this audience, I think what you just said bears out. The natural audience of this book.
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Now, it's ironic that the Cookbook store chose me to interview you. Allison thinks that I'm up on this stage because I'm such a big foodie and, won't go away as a foodie. But what Allison didn't know is that my mother and I had a bad relationship, and that she was also a disappointed, bright woman, and that I was disappointed in her as a mother. And one of the things I know about that situation is that we daughters of disappointed mothers have a pretty big well of guilt to expiate because we didn't appreciate them when they were alive. We didn't get who they were.
Right.
And I'm wondering how much of the book is about expiating that guilt.
There's certainly some of it, and certainly because I made, my mother into this halcyon character in the other books, I did feel that I sort of owed it to her. But I don't think that this is a book of catharsis for me. I think it's a book of discovery. And, one of the things that has been important for me in talking to people is to be able to say to women whose mothers are alive, don't wait until it's too late. Talk to her. Find out what her life was like. If you have the strength to meet your mother as a person instead of as your mother, do it before you can't do it anymore.
What a wonderful piece of advice, huh? I bet you wish you could have done that.
I do. And it's interesting because one woman that I spoke to last week said, my mother passed away last year, but I've gone, after I read your book, I called up all her friends who are still living and went and said, who was she for you? What did she want from me? And, for me, it's, my mother's friends aren't alive anymore either, so I can't even do that.
Yeah, that's regret.